Rangers fans, welcome to Season 3 of Liberty Blue, the essential New York Rangers podcast. I'm Andrew Chelney, alongside Nick Zararis. And Nick, we made it, baby. Oh, we're so back. The regular season is here. Some teams have already started last week. They were in Europe, but hey, the Rangers start tonight against the Penguins. There was some breaking news earlier from Kevin Weeks that allegedly Igor Shesterkin turned down an 8-year, $88 million contract extension. I can't blame him.
All right. Let's start with the news angle and work our way backwards. So, What did we see play out last week in Boston when a contract negotiation was not going the way that the powers that be wanted it to? They put the number out there to make the player seem unreasonable. It does not take a rocket science to figure out that this is out there because the Rangers want this out there, that you can always garner, I won't say a majority, but a decent chunk of the fan base, and you can always get 30 to 40% of the fan base to be mad at the millionaire athlete as opposed to the billion-dollar corporation. It is always doable because there are people, and it is reasonable to say, well, why can't he take $11 million? That's a lot of money. That would be the second highest paid player on the team. So working our way back from there, number one, I'm going to say this one time and one time only because I don't want to talk about Jacob Trouba every episode of every season for the rest of the time. If Jacob Trouba is worth $8 million to this hockey team, Igor Shesterkin is worth $50 million to this hockey team. Let's just call a spade a spade. You cannot in good conscience say, well, Shesterkin's being greedy, and then allow the Rangers to roster Trouba, who forced his way onto staying on the team at a rate that is at least 2 times worth what he should actually be paid, and call him selfish. And look, I understand. I don't know everyone's position on everything. We don't all walk around with our takes on our clothes, so I don't know where people stand on things.
Some people would want to do that. That'd be, that's the next clothing idea right there.
I mean, because at some point, I feel like I'm losing my mind because everybody's got an opinion about everything, and I don't know where people are at on certain things. But it really does feel like we lose the plot at points. And I know you agree. We've talked about this sporadically over the summer, and I said it this morning, and I was met with a little bit of pushback, but this is posturing. The Rangers don't have a choice here.
No.
So tell me this, Andrew. The Rangers, who are all in agreement that we can't run this core back next year because it's not cost prudent, they're going to let their best player walk.
Right.
Or what are they going to get in return for him in a trade the day before the season starts? You know, how on what planet is Chris Drury, who has made every decision, who as short-sighted as humanly possible, going to trade the most important and best player on his team going into a make or break season? On what planet are they not doing this? And look, the other point I want to get in here before I throw it over to you, I understand against an $84.5 million salary cap, $11 million is a lot of money. Conservative estimates, and again, this very well might be like JFK telling them to take the roof off of the car in Dallas that day, but unless there's a lockout in 2026, everything should be fine. Money-wise, cap-wise, unless there's a lockout 2 years from now, which there could be. I'm not going to say it can't happen, but
sure.
Unless there is a lockout 2 years from now, the salary cap could very well be $102 million 3 years from now. I understand it's a lot of money. I understand tensions are high. But let's be frank here. If the Rangers had Antti Raanta and, Cam Talbot as their goalie tandem, this is a 41-win team. They can make the playoffs. They're not winning anything with this team. They are fundamentally designed where it doesn't matter if they're outchanced. It doesn't matter if they're out expected goals because they got the eraser. Because Shesterkin fixes the problems. You get rid of the fixer of the problems. You know what you're left with, Andrew? Problems. You know what would have happened in Pulp Fiction if they went to call Winston Wolfe and he said, nah, sorry, guys, I can't leave the party? Travolta and Samuel L. Jackson go to jail because they're driving around L.A. in a car soaked in blood with a dead body in the backseat. That's what happens. Okay, you call the Wolf and he makes the problem go away. Without Shesterkin, the problems are not going away. All you are left with is problems.
Here's the thing. People need to digest this and understand this. If you remove Igor Shesterkin from this team, the DNA of this team falls apart. The core DNA of the New York Rangers is we're going to be bad at 5-on-5. We're going to have
not bad. Mediocre.
Worse than they should be for the type of caliber team that they posturize that they are. right? If you're supposed to be one of, if not the caliber team in the NHL, you're supposed to be a Stanley Cup contender, a real contender to win, your 5-on-5 numbers should objectively be better than what they are. If your core DNA is hinged upon being mediocre at 5-on-5 and winning the special teams battle, you need one of the, if not the best goalies on the planet to be able to backstop your team to do that. Because if you're not scoring at 5-on-5 and you're relying on refereeing to get you the goals, then you need to have an elite superstar goaltender to patch those holes for you when there's no penalties on the play, right? If you remove Igor Shesterkin from the equation, all of that falls apart. This team is built upon hanging on at 5-on-5 with elite goaltending and then working your magic on the power play. That is how the Rangers are built. If you remove Shesterkin from that equation, this team does not work anymore. You would have to change the entire layout of the team. Now, I understand that, even Jacob Trouba was like, oh, this is the last chance with this core, and anything could happen. I understand that. This team is, if you let Shesterkin, the Rangers are not going to let Shesterkin walk. Like that's just not going to happen.
And they're not going to trade him. That's why this is a stupid argument. This is a stupid argument.
This is all ridiculous. Like Igor is not going anywhere. And also another angle that you have to think about is, first of all, Shesterkin has all the power. Yep. And Drury knows it, and so does Shesterkin.
That's why they leaked the number. They know.
Yeah, of course. Of course. He has all of the power. And also, you got to think of it this way. I would have to imagine Igor Shesterkin would not want to go to a bad team. Bad teams are all the teams right now that, one, have a blank check to give Igor if they so wanted to, and two, a spot in the start, as their starting goaltender. They don't. There's teams like Columbus that that could use him, and teams like that. But would Igor go to one of those teams and leave a top contender? I would have to think he wouldn't, on the premise of him being a psycho about winning, right? So, which other contender has 12 plus million in cap space and also a problem in net that can get resolved all in one fell swoop? This is the best spot for Igor to be in. He knows that. Drury knows that. Everybody knows that. But also, Igor has all the power, and everybody knows that in this situation too. It's going to get done because he said no to 8 times 11, and the rumor has been out there for 3 months that he's wanted 12. I would have to think he's going to agree to like 11.5, 11.7 or whatever. We're going to call it a day. Like, if they're only $1 million apart, this is going to get done. This is not an if, this is a when. And I think all this is going to blow over and it'll be fine. It'll be fine. Everybody can breathe.
All right. Do you want to attack this more from the actual hockey results or from the logistics, team building, planning perspective? Because I think both matter to this conversation a lot. And I want people to recognize something. The Rangers are in this position right now because of decisions they've made 2, 3, and 4 years ago. The time for a conversation about maybe we don't put chips in with this group was 2 and 3 years ago. It's not now. You gave Zibanejad and Fox long-term extensions. You gave those guys 8-year deals. You brought in Trocheck on a 7-year deal. You still have Panarin and Kreider under contract for a handful of more seasons. You knew that your UFAs, your RFAs were going to line up as UFAs within a 2 and 3 year window where you're going to have to pay Lafreniere and K'Andre Miller and Schneider in one summer. You know you were going to have to pay Kakko eventually. And the way they have gamed this out is to continue pushing a little bit more leverage in every season. It's not we're going to subtract to improve here. It has been a constant addition,
yep.
Tinkering around the edges because they fundamentally believe in the core. They don't think the core is the issue. They think the issue is one more winger, one more defenseman, and we're right there. They think they are close. And in doing that, that tells you they don't think the core is the problem. They are telling you they think they are right there, that this is a marginal issue. And because of that, you have made financial commitments to certain players. And because of those commitments, you are locked in. Do not tell me giving Shesterkin is the reason they don't have flexibility. The reason they don't have flexibility is they picked Zibanejad over Eichel. They brought in Trocheck coming off of a season where they bought results that weren't that sticky. Remember, that team in 2021-2022 had really weak 5-on-5 results, and it was driven entirely by, I won't say entirely, mostly by Shesterkin winning the Vezina. Because of that, a lot of people took the Rangers' returns earlier than they were coming in. You know, I made the analogy after they lost to the Devils 2 seasons ago now that they took the sugar high that, oh, we're good. Let's keep getting better right now, as opposed to taking an honest step back and saying, well, we had to go out and get an Andrew Kopp and a Frank Vetrano and a Tyler Mott and a Justin Braun all in one offseason. So we're going to bring in Vinny Trocheck, and we think we're going to be right there. And we're going to add at the deadline again. We're going to bring in Tarasenko and Kane. We're not going to fix our defensive issues. And it's important to understand. That's why we hammer all of these little decisions, because over time they accumulate. The Rangers are too far down the road with this group to seriously consider the alternative. And that's why Andrew and I are scoffing at the idea of letting him walk or trading him, because you do that. So what are you going to tell me you're doing? Panarin and Zibanejad are both 32. Panarin and Kreider are both 32. Zibanejad and Trocheck are both 31. Trouba is 30. You're going to tell me we're going to re-rack this team with our 4 most expensive players as aging 30-year-olds, and we're going to retool on the fly? We're going to do what Pittsburgh is doing right now? That's what you're telling me?
Because that's going really well for them, by the way.
That's the thing. I can't understand how you come to this. And look, if you want to say they need to retool, they need to change the direction of the team, that's an entirely different conversation.
Sure.
If you want to say after this year, and the other thing is, you can't do that because you can't trade Shesterkin in season, because then that punts this season. You can't say and there's not a hockey trade to be made here. No. It's not like you get good goalie value. What did the Flames get for Markstrom? And Markstrom is nowhere near as good as Shesterkin. He's 6 years older, I believe. I think Shesterkin's turning 30. I think Markstrom's 35. He's 6 years older. And would you get a first-round pick and Kevin Ball, who is not good? As much as Flames fans keep trying to tell me, well, he's not very good. So what's the hockey trade to be made here? You can't tell me it's Askarov, because he's hurt and he has no NHL experience, and you're not going to put the stake of a franchise in a sliding door season on a 20-something-year-old goalie who has never played in the NHL before. You can't tell me that's your plan. There is no hockey trade to be made here. If this was a position player, if this was Kreider, if this was Trouba, it's different. That is more feasible to make a hockey trade for. You might be able to turn Kreider into, I don't know, a top 9 forward on an RFA contract that's older, but that has a little NHL experience, but you're banking. So like the equivalent would be trying to find your modern Zibanejad for Brassard. That's the argument you're saying, is we can do that with Shesterkin. The problem is the goalie market doesn't work that way, and the Rangers are too far down the road with this group. That's the thing. If you want to change everything about the team, okay, let's have that conversation. We need a new GM. If we're going to trade Shesterkin, we might as well start trying to sell some of our other guys, whether that's Panarin, who we know has a full no move, Zibanejad, who has a full no move, Trocheck, who has a full no move. If you want to try and blow it up, by all means, let's have that conversation. But don't tell me Christopher Drury, who has burned all of his draft picks and his cap space, is going to be in on that, because we know he isn't. We know he is not about long-term planning. It is about short-term solutions, because they think they are right there. The problem is they're not right there.
And the argument would have, I mean, even a molecule of, basis of reality, if the Rangers had another Shesterkin in the pipeline. If they had another...
Not even Shesterkin, they just had a younger goalie who was NHL ready.
Right. But what I'm saying, there's no world in which the Rangers see getting rid of Shesterkin as a pot. Like, there's no way. The Rangers are going to pay Shesterkin whatever he wants, and he's going to be here. That's, the arguing otherwise is just, you're arguing, you're yelling at a wall. But the argument would hold even like the slightest bit more value if the Rangers had some goalie in the pipeline that they could reliably say, okay, he's the next guy, and he's so good that, we have a problem on our hands, and okay, well, what do we do? They don't have that. It's not like the Rangers have an Askarov waiting in the AHL and texting, Chris Drury every day. Hey, so when am I gonna get called up? Hey, so what's the plan? Hey, at like 1 a.m. Hey, what are you doing? Like he's like, there's no goalie in the Rangers pipeline that does that. There's nobody as good.
There's not enough goalies in the NHL. Like if you like purely abstractly, like just as a thought exercise. Okay. Yeah. You could sell me on UC Saros. You could sell me on Connor Hellebuck. You might be able to sell me on Jeremy Swayman. And after that, then it starts becoming more of a, well, I don't know. And you're not getting any of those guys. You are not getting top 5 goalies don't become available. Right. The only reason Jacob Markstrom became available is because he is 35 years old and the Flames understand it's over. You are not, and the opportunity has passed you. You don't get to do what some people think the Rangers are going to do. And again, you and I have said this the entirety of the 15 minutes we've been talking. This is getting done. The number might look a little crooked to some people, but the Rangers do not have any room here.
Also, can we, I know you don't do this, but I've seen conjecture from some of the top writers and those people, this whole minutes thing.
That's not a real conversation.
It's just throw it in the trash.
That person is not
throw it in the trash.
That person's hockey opinions aren't worth considering. And that's the thing. You can do whatever thought exercises you want. The NHL is not like the NBA. It is not like the NFL. It is not like Major League Baseball. As much as I have tried, I have been doing hockey content for almost 10 years now. As much as I have tried to find the single most efficient way to build a roster as far as money for goalie, defense, and forwards, there is no one-size-fits-all rule. The Panthers just won the Stanley Cup, paying mid-30s Bobrovsky $10 million, most expensive goalie to ever win the Stanley Cup. Tampa Bay, the second cup they won, Vasilevsky was getting paid. You can say you can't win paying a goalie. That is not factually correct. You can say it's more difficult because a goalie's impact on the team is more marginal than the other positions because of the way a goalie influences the score of the game versus a defenseman or a forward. But you can't say, well, they can't do it because the Rangers absolutely could do it.
Yep. There
are options. They have chosen this course of action. We wouldn't be having this conversation if they were able to push that Trouba trade through. We wouldn't.
No.
The Rangers at worst would have at least $4 million in cap space because that's if they retained half. If they were able to get rid of more than that, maybe you have a little bit more. But I understand some people are looking at this and feeling that looming dread of, well, shit, if we sign Shesterkin, how are we going to pay Miller, or how are we going to pay Lafreniere? How are we going to pay Schneider? I understand that. That's why Pizza Boy gets the big bucks, okay? That's why Andrew and I are here doing a podcast. If Chris Drury is as smart as he has portrayed himself, and that, remember, I forget if it was Molly who wrote it or if it was Larry who wrote it, but his inner circle is himself. I forget who wrote that in their column last year going into the trade deadline, but if his inner circle is himself.
Sounds like a Larry thing, but that's
I forget who wrote it. It was in a post feature. It was one of them two, one of those two. If Chris Drury is as good at this as he thinks he is, he's got it, right?
Yeah.
I mean, if as much as I don't like to portray myself as being that smart, because frankly, I'm not, at some point, when you just put the numbers in a spreadsheet, you can find ways to make this work. You absolutely can. I found a way. You could have kept Buchnevich, Zibanejad, and Eichel all on the same team for one season.
Don't do this to me. Come on.
I found the way. Yeah. As much as everyone wants to say, well, they couldn't do it. They couldn't. Yeah. They put their hands. It's too hard.
It's actually like
not
Chuck Fletcher
hard.
Said. It's too hard. Yeah, Chuck Fletcher. If Chuck Fletcher said it, then surely it's true.
Look. I don't want to turn this into a referendum on the general manager, but that's ultimately what this is.
Yep.
They are here because of the decisions they have made. They have burned picks to make bad players go away. They have retained salary to make bad players go away.
They're going to have to do more of that in the summer.
That is on the horizon. And you don't get to tell me, well, no, Shesterkin, they can't pay him. Shesterkin is the one guy who deserves it.
Yep.
All we do is lament that, well, Trouba's overpaid, Zibanejad's overpaid, Kreider's overpaid, Panarin's overpaid, Fox is overpaid, Zibanejad's overpaid, Goudreau's overpaid, Patrick Nemeth's overpaid, the general manager's overpaid, the beer is too expensive, the pizza's too expensive. The one guy who shows up in the playoffs every single time you have gone to the playoffs, and we're doing this. And again, like I said before, I don't understand. I don't know everyone's opinion about everything. I don't know. Maybe the same people who are lamenting the Shesterkin money are the same ones who are like us, who they got to get rid of that Trouba money so they can plan. Maybe they are.
I don't think so. I'm sure those people exist, but it's it's a small percentage of the people that are loudly against the new Igor contract. It doesn't make, because at the end of the day, all you have to do is shed a little bit of money somewhere else and you can pay that contract without an issue. That's it. It's not like, obviously, and also like, it doesn't look good now if you give him 12, but in a couple of years, 12 isn't going to look that bad. Like the cap, and you mentioned a few minutes ago, like the cap is only going to go up. It's 12. It looks bad in 2024.
You can hear me knocking on wood right now, because there is a collective bargaining agreement that needs to be ironed out by the end of 2026, going into 2027. And as we know, Gary will go into the dirt defending the owner's ability to keep every last penny. So I won't say definitively the cap's going to keep going up, because I said that in 2019, and then there was a once in a century pandemic that kind of jacked that up for everybody. Like objectively, if the cap was 108 million right now, Trouba's 8 million wouldn't seem as bad. But this is the economic reality these teams are in, and because of the way the Rangers have planned their team, this is where they're at. They need to figure out a solution, because you don't subtract the player the caliber of Shesterkin from your team and recover from that in one season, especially when he is as fundamentally instrumental in the way your team plays. You cannot be a 48, 49% possession team with an average goalie. I tweeted it this morning and I did the math. I did the back of the envelope math. If the Rangers had league average goaltending last year, they would have been 22nd in goals against. The Rangers, as they are constructed, are set up to trade chances, to be a transition team, to concede a lot defensively, because all they got to do is break out once and then they're off to the races. And those off to the races, high chances, those rush chances typically are more high danger, because you're able to get the goalie moving left to right. You're able to get closer to the net. You might be able to get the numbers advantage of a 2-on-1 or a 3-on-2. And because of that, you are allowed to be a little lower caliber defensively in trying to cheat for offense effectively. But you can't do that if you don't have a great goalie. Look what happened to the Devils last year without NHL caliber goaltending. And look, I understand they had 4 injuries to their 6 defensemen to start the season, and they ended up the year with like Nemec and Luke Hughes playing the bulk of the minutes. I understand that. I really do. And every team is going to struggle if you take away their best player. That's another thing. Like, I understand, yes, you take Shesterkin away from the Rangers aren't very good. You take McDavid away from Edmonton, Pasta away from Boston, etc. I get it. I understand all of these counterpoints. I do. I really do understand what people want to do. That is not how this general manager has operated, and it is 2 separate conversations. And look, maybe this year doesn't go the way we think it is. Maybe they're out in the first round again, and then we have a very different conversation. But I do want to say this. There is no way that we get to July 1st of next year and Shesterkin is an unrestricted free agent. It won't happen. It will not happen. If it were to happen, we're talking, I don't want to say cataclysmic failure, because they do still have 2 of the top 15 players in the world, but then I think the argument to get rid of the general manager is obvious. Like at that point, if you let the best player walk to unrestricted free agency in the middle of your cup contention window and you get nothing in return, I think it's a stinging indictment. But again, this is going to get done. And as much as the Rangers are going to play it off as, well, we want him here, it's a matter if he wants to be here. If you can bend over backwards to accommodate bad players, you can bend over backwards to accommodate good ones too. That's what a responsible hockey team would do.
That's the thing. And that's hopefully not the path they go down, because if you're really going to go out of your way to defend guys that aren't very good on the ice, but you like, as human beings, then by all accounts, the Rangers like Igor as a human being, and Igor also is your best player night in and night out. So why are you bending over backwards for like Barclay Goodrow when he was here, but you wouldn't bend over backwards for one of, if not the best goaltender on the planet, who is the reason why you win a lot of these games, because he's so good at what he does that no matter what the other team does, they cannot score on this man. Like, of all the lines in the sand to draw, this is where you do it. That seems very strange to me. And again, Nick and I have been saying this for 25 and a half minutes now. This is going to get done. The Rangers are going to sign Igor Shesterkin. It is not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. He said no to 11. The rumor was 12. I'm sure it'll be like 11 and a half, 11.8, whatever it is. And Igor will be a Ranger forever. Like that. The alternative just isn't possible. It's not possible, and Drury knows it's not possible.
Hang on. I want to grab my notebook, because this is while I was sitting there in the waiting room for my sister to get her wisdom teeth out, I was doing some work to prep for this episode. And I want to read you something. So let's say the Rangers hypothetically think they're close. And when we talked to Sam last week, he had said that he feels, and the team feels, that the group is right. It's just a matter of squeezing a little bit more out of what's here. So, of the players on this team that could conceivably give you more, let's say we'll start Will Cooley. He gave you 13 goals last year, first year in the NHL. Yeah, I think he could push for 20 goals. I think 20 goals is Will Cooley's ceiling as an NHL player. I don't think he's ever a second liner on a good team. I think he is a good third liner. I think he could be a great fourth liner. I think that is reasonable. Anything more than that is too much. Philip Hedl, if he is healthy, yes, I think he can give you 20 to 25 goals. That is asking a lot for somebody whose career average is 16. He's never going to get power play time to accumulate the stats. Lafreniere, career average 21 goals. He's 22 years old. You might be able to squeeze a few more goals if he sneaks onto a first power play or that line gets more minutes, but that's asking for environmental changes that are not a guarantee. Kakko's career average in goals for a season is 16. He's 23 years old. I think 20 is probably about the limit for what Kakko has. And then Jones, Miller, Schneider, all of those guys have varying degrees of more to give you. That's reasonable, I think you could say. But then we're talking about, how are you getting more from Panarin, who had the best year of his life at 32 years old? How are you getting more from Zibanejad, Trocheck, Kreider, Trouba, Lindgren, or Shesterkin for that matter? How much more could you reasonably expect to squeeze from your veteran paid guys to get them over that finish line? That tells you that the calculus is that they think these young guys, whether that's all the defensemen, the forwards, whatever, that combination of guys, Cooley, Hedl, Kakko, Lafreniere, Miller, Schneider, Jones, that's where they think they have more to give. How are you going about getting that? And how do you accommodate that? Because lest we forget, they do have to figure out what they're doing with Lafreniere and Miller. If Lafreniere has the year we all hope he does, he's getting more than Slafkovsky got. At least, because the way math works, he is that much closer to unrestricted free agency. So what? You're going to tell me they're going to bridge Miller, Lafreniere, and Schneider next summer, and they're going to pay Shesterkin? Like, at certain point, and I know Andrew and I have been a little early on this about shit hitting the fan cap-wise. We were talking about this 2 summers ago after they lost to the Devils, but the rent is becoming due.
Yep.
And you have to eventually pay for the decisions you've made. They don't have a young star ready to jump in. As much as we hope it's Gabriel Perreault probably isn't playing NHL minutes until this spring. You're telling me they're going to put him on the first or second line? No. All right. No. If he goes into the Kakko spot, okay. Is he getting power play time? No. Is he getting penalty kill time? No. Is he getting 14 minutes a game on the third line? Well, no, we got to protect the lead. We can't have the young guy out there at the end of the game to protect. It is very easy to be doomerist. And I don't want this conversation to have a doomerist slant to it, because I don't think that's the perspective. I think the Rangers think they are very close. I think they think that in a perfect world, They win the cup this year. They pay Igor. And they deal with the consequences of everything else later. I really do think the Rangers are kind of banking on that being the outcome this year, because the uncertainty is leaving a lot of people, me included, asking themselves, what's the plan here? Because I see a lot of people saying, well, if you give Shesterkin the money he's asking for, well, you're going to lock yourself into a team that's not cup good. They're already not cup good. Like, what are we talking about here?
Yeah. You think letting Igor go is going to get this team closer?
What are you doing with that $11 million?
What is the argument here?
Like, what are you doing with that $11 million? What, you're going to get Linus Ullmark and what, a third line wing, a second line wing, and you're telling me that's going to be commensurate with the value Shesterkin brings?
I looked it up, man. The only goalies that are expiring contracts this year that are worth a damn is Linus Ullmark, and also, I guess, Jake Ottinger. He's an RFA. He's also not going anywhere. Like, these conversations are useless because they're just, this isn't happening. None of these, like, the Rangers understand. They are, listen, for all the things that people say about Chris Drury, I have to think that he's well aware of the situation that he's put this team in, right? The Rangers know that Igor is the most important part of the team. If you want to argue he's number 10, but like, I'm not splitting hairs. Fine. You will go have fun with that. But this team does not get any closer to Stanley Cup contention without Igor Shesterkin. Like, that is the most obvious statement I could ever make. But for some reason, we still have to make it because there's people that are arguing that he shouldn't get that pay, that he shouldn't get that money. That's ridiculous. Give him the key to the city. Give him a blank check.
Hey, bro, Eric Adams is writing checks. He'll do it.
Yeah. Well, from maybe not from his office, from a different location. And those checks might get bounced. But that's beside the point. If
you're committing fraud, you pay with a check. Yeah. If you commit in fraud, pay him with a check.
But like, give him a holiday in the city. Like, name a street after him. It doesn't matter. Give him whatever he wants. This man is one of, if not the best goaltender on the face of the earth. If you're arguing that 11 is right there and 11.5 is too much, take a hike. Take a hike, go outside and think about what you're saying about not only the position, Igor as a player, and I guess also as a person, but as a player, and what he does to make this team better. Because without Igor Shesterkin, if you put anybody else in the league, obviously, Connor Hellebuyck, of the people that are could marginally be available, there's no name on the face of the earth that could make this team better than Igor Shesterkin. It is not happening. These people don't exist. We're not playing be a GM mode. People have to wake up and realize this. Like, we're not toying with fake people, and we're not playing a video game. I think like Igor is the best, man. And you give him what he wants because he's the best at what he does. There's no plan B here. Your plan A.
Oh no, the plan B is to blow it up. That's the plan B.
But that's not happening.
Exactly. That's the thing. Like, and look, I have questioned whether or not Drury has looked out for the long-term planning, or whether he's been more invested in just get them in the playoffs every year, long-term job security, what have you. It's not going to help your long-term job security if the reason we fired the last guy and his boss was, well, we didn't make the playoffs fast enough. And you're going to go back to James Dolan and say, well, I know we just gave all of these contracts out, but I think we need to be bad for a year or two to reset our cap situation. I'm sure Jimmy Dolan's going to go for that.
Yeah, right. Surely.
At a certain point, you made the bed. You have to figure it out. All right. Is there anything else you want to get in on Shesterkin before we move along, or do you think we've left it at a reasonable point?
Pay that man his money. That's all I got.
At a certain point, yeah. Word to Teddy KGB. Pay that man his money. All right. In spite of the last 34 minutes of conversation, the Rangers are going to be a good hockey team this year.
They are. It'll be fun.
They're going to win something in the ballpark of 43 to 55 regular season games. They will win something in that range of outcomes. It's more likely than not they're going to win close to 50 games, maybe even more than 50 games. I think the Rangers on a nightly basis have a pretty high floor. I think you and I in particular are very bullish on that third line, the potential it brings as far as 5-on-5 play, controlling the game, taking responsibility off of the defense. We are hopeful that Adam Fox is fully healthy and ready to go. We hope that Shesterkin doesn't take a month or so to get going, because that's going to, A, make this conversation worse, and B, make us more reliant on Jonathan Quick. And as much as I enjoyed Quick last year, I don't bank on Jonathan Quick being an above average goalie again at 30, not 37, 38 years old, whatever he is. And they are going to be a really good regular season team. And it feels like counting the chickens before they hatch, only being worried about the playoffs at this point in the season. But if they don't make the playoffs, it doesn't matter. Like, if they don't make the playoffs, then okay, if they don't make the playoffs, then we can start really having some serious conversations.
We're looking ahead of the playoffs, because like, if they don't get there, then all, like, blow the entire team up for all that matters. Like at that point, if you're telling me with this core, with this team, they don't make the playoffs, yeah, I mean, like this it's so Jover. Like, you can't. There's no conversation to be had. The expectation is obviously they make the playoffs. So, whether they win 48 or 49 or 50 games. They won all of the games last season, and guess what? They didn't win the Stanley Cup in the playoffs when it mattered. So at a certain point, the number one priority that we have to look at is, all of these games matter to a certain extent, and we want good habits for. I mean, we've talked about this for pretty much every episode of the past 3 seasons, where we want good habits during these games. If you're winning 6-5 every night, but the 5 goals you give up are brutal 2-on-1s or just bad giveaways, but you're scoring 6 goals the other way because the goalie just took a nap or went to go get lunch and you put it in the empty net. That's still, you won, but at what cost? Like, you're building terrible habits. The most important thing through games 180 to 82 is winning, but at a consistent rate and at the style of play that you want to play come April. This is your opportunity to clean up your bad habits, to really tighten up those loose screws. It's game 1. It's October. Like, this team will look better come February, March. But for the most part, this is the same team. Like, a lot of their quote unquote growing pains should not be here, because they've been like, this is mostly the same exact roster besides Riley Smith fielding the ice. And Victor Mancini, who made the team look good in preseason. Congrats to them. This is for the most part the same team. So by all accounts, a lot of those issues that other teams have had, when they have a lot of new faces on the roster, where they have to go through 6 to 8 or 10 weeks of, I thought you were going here. Oh wait, that's a miscommunication, or a lot of that shouldn't happen here, because this is the same team. This is the same roster. So now is your opportunity to clean up a lot of your mistakes, a lot of those miscoms early, and really just focus on building good habits. Because if you get to April and a lot of your good habits aren't there and you're still kind of relying on the same issues, you know what they say about trying the same experiment and expecting different results.
You can't even say that. The Rangers are doing it anyway.
They are.
We spent 15 years with one of the 5 best goalies of his era, first ballot Hall of Famers, the goalie. They made a cup final once and they lost in 5 games. We're doing effectively the same thing here. We're running it back with a top 5 goalie who is going to reset the market for the position. There are really talented individual players. Their style is not very conducive to playoff success. Because of that, it makes their margin for error very small. It requires basically no dead weight. I am curious to see how long they're willing to do Edstrom, Rempe, and Sam Carrick. I don't think Sam Carrick is a 4th line center on a Stanley Cup contender. I know he was just on the Oilers, who were, but he was not an every game player for the Oilers in the playoffs last year.
If anything, come the deadline, he won't be here. So
they'll replace. I do wish they were willing to give, even if it was just for a week, Bedard or Othman a shot, just to test the water.
We don't. Unfortunately, Connor Bedard is not on the Rangers.
Yes.
That'd be great. That'd be fun.
Giving Brett Berard just a cup of coffee to see where he's at, because they're going to burn through guys. You know, the average NHL team is going to play about 30 guys over the course of a season, give or take one or two. You're going to get 8th defenseman, 9th defenseman. You're going to go through 15, 16, 17, 18 forwards. You're probably going to need a third goalie for at least 1 or 2 games this year just because of the nature of the sport. It is a long season. And I want to make this last point before I start wrapping up.
But before you do that, really quickly, we mentioned from time to time the old adage of why play a guy you know is bad when you can try out a new guy who might be bad or he might be not bad. You don't know why every team ever is like, oh, we know he's not very good, but we're gonna play him because he's 29. As opposed to, oh, we don't know if this 20-year-old is good or not, but he's only 20. So we're just going to stick this bad guy in front of him and pretend that everything is fine. Why? Why do teams do that? That is just it never ceases to amaze me that teams continue to kind of get in their own way a little bit. And it's just funny to me.
The stupid answer and the honest answer is, well, that's the way we've always done it. I mean, that's the fundamental reason. It is October 9th, 10th, 9th. Yeah, it's October 9th. And I want to make this point. If you're watching on YouTube, you'll get this point a little bit more than if you're listening. But if you're listening, I'm about to hold out my fingers counting the months. October, November, December, January, February, March, April. We're talking about 6.5 months just to get to the playoffs. If everything goes well, we are talking about 9 to 10 months of this. There will be ups. There will be downs. The key, as always, and they did a really good job of this last year, is finding that middle ground. Not riding too high, not getting too low. Finding a nice equilibrium that most nights is good enough to hang around, because when the Rangers hang around in a game, on most nights, they have the high-end talent to beat the other team. You hang around in every game, you'll find a way. They were masters of this last season. They did a nice job of this at points in the playoffs of pulling games out of their ass. I am under no illusion that guys like Kreider and Zibanejad and Panarin and Trocheck are going to change who they are as players at this point in their NHL careers. I understand that. I don't think it is a reasonable expectation or it's even feasible to think that you are going to see fundamental changes in how those guys play the game. I think if you are looking for Zibanejad to hit 100 points, I think if you're looking for Panarin to be close to what he was last year, I think all of that, I don't think that's realistic, and B, I just don't think that's really the point. Until the Rangers find a way to translate how they play in the regular season to the playoffs, we are operating in hypotheticals. They are going to win a ton of regular season games. There's going to be a lot of fun along the way. They will make a trade or two at the deadline that we will all argue about incessantly for a week. And then 2 weeks later, we'll probably stop caring because that person they add won't play that big of a role. I don't think I've heard the name Jack Roslovic in a month or two, but at a certain point, you got to take a step back and they got to play the games. That starts tonight. I'm very excited to see how they do against the Pittsburgh Crypt Keepers. I cannot wait to hear, oh, you guys know who's the new assistant coach of the Pittsburgh Penguins, former Ranger coach David Quinn. Fond memories of his time in New York.
Every time he's on TV.
Had fond memories of his time in New York, but knows he had to do some growing as a coach, got to catch on in San Jose. And his old friend Mike Sullivan wanted to give him one more chance to see if he was ready. He's going to coach with Mike at the Four Nations Face-Off this February. He's very excited to get back out there.
Nick has stolen the script of the team of whoever's casting this game.
We'll talk a lot about Riley Smith playing with Evgeny Malkin last year, how it didn't work. We're going to talk a lot about that playoff series from 3 years ago. Yeah. Even though Louis Domingue is somewhere in Hartford, Connecticut, his name will be brought up. Spicy pork will be mentioned.
Of course.
I'm positive.
Yeah.
Enjoy
TNT, by the way, on the call tonight.
Yeah, I mean, first game of the season, Rangers Penguins. I get it. We'll see Sam and Joe on Saturday for the Utah against the first MSG game of the year. You might be able to get into that cheaper than a Met playoff game, which is kind of crazy to say out loud, but looking at the prices, it is cheaper to get in Saturday night at MSG than it was today or tomorrow at Citi Field. But man, it's a long ride. Try and breathe. I'm sure that in the time between us recording this episode and the puck dropping, Shesterkin will sign the extension and the first 30 minutes will have been a waste. But we will talk to you guys next week. If you could be so kind, please subscribe to the show wherever you get your podcasts. If you're listening on Apple or Spotify, drop the show a 5-star review. If you're watching over on YouTube, hit the subscribe button, hit the alarm bell so you get a notification whenever new content goes live. We'll talk to you guys next week after the Rangers have played real regular season hockey.
Later.